Welcome to the latest episode of the National Leaderology Association podcast. Today, we're going to be speaking about a topic near and dear to my heart, um, leading change, navigating the leadership landscape. I am your host, Dr. Amin Sanaia. I'm a leaderologist, a thought leader, and an author. But most importantly, today I have Anna Mason with me. Me and Anna have met through different projects we've worked on, and I am so happy to have her with us. Anna, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your work is like.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, we go way back, a couple years at least now. But I own my own consulting business. I do management and leadership training and consulting. I work a lot with a behavioral assessment tool called the Predictive Index. That's a lot of the work I do with clients, but I consult around that particular tool as well. But I've branched out from there and have done some leadership trainings in emotional intelligence, um, as well as just general consulting with leadership teams. Been recently really excited to expand my work into coaching. I just got my coaching certificate with the IFC, the International Coaching Federation. So
Congratulations.
lots of fun things. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
in looking at today's topic, I knew that you were the right person to have a conversation with that topic. So when we look at effective leadership and managing organizational change, uh, that's like a key to orchestrating a symphony in the
Oh,
face of
absolutely.
evolving dynamics, where usually the conductor embodying strategic vision and empathetic acumen navigates the ensemble through all the transitions.
Mm.
Um, Effective leadership. I know those words, we can speak about that in a lot of terms. But let's go into a little bit more of what that looks like, especially in change. So the business landscape and why organizations often need to adapt is the reason for change uh, in itself. And I know with your clients, that's the reason why they reach out to you. Usually, your client's not going to reach out to you if they don't have something that it's not working effectively or being proficient at. So let's talk a little bit about three things that I want to focus on here in our first segment. Uh, Technological advancements, global market shifts. So it's not something that's just concerns us here in the United States. But now, since we are in a global economy, it's a global marketplace, the shifts affects everyone. And also societal changes. So organizations, in order to be successful, have to adapt in order to stay relevant, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about you know a previous client or a client that you might be working with and their need for change and what does that look like?
Yeah, I can think of a couple examples. But the one that comes first to my mind is a client who is relatively small in the number of employees that they have, but big in their, you know, in their revenue. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that they're necessarily profitable, but it's a $110 million business, but they have just under 100 employees. But they've grown from, 1 million to 110 million in like 5 years.
Wow.
They're in the ag sector. I'm in Iowa, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
ag businesses here. So they have, their success on the outside appears to be incredibly profound. But when you grow that fast, they basically 5 years ago were a startup, and now they're in fast growth. So they are missing a lot of, even currently, missing a lot of the systems that are necessary to keep up on the people scale, right? So they,
Yeah.
they probably 2 years ago, maybe three, implemented their first handbook, for example, right? Because before that, it was just these key startup folks that were just, doing everything. They had their hands in all the pots. And to grow, they realized they needed to, hire people. They needed different types of skill sets. And so it has been a little bit, it's been a very quick change, and there has been some pain around that change because, you go from an environment and a culture really where there's no rules. There is the Wild West, and then all of a sudden you start recognizing from from the top that there needs to be some structure. The structure is there to protect everybody. It's there to make people, feel like they know where they're going, but that can have mixed reactions, of course. So I loved your example at the beginning of the conductor of a symphony. And one example, I'll give you a quick story about a change that they implemented. They decided to implement a review process so that they could actually have something measurable to determine, whether someone was going to advance or get a bonus or whatever the case was. And this was really important because before that, they were just basically at the end of the year saying, well, here's a couple $100, here's a couple $1,000. There was no rhyme or reason, so it didn't feel fair. So they wanted to base their bonuses on performance, which a lot of companies do. So they decided to roll this out. This new leadership team rolled it out. And like the conductor, they step out onto their stage to reveal this new review process. And then if I can stay with the metaphor, they just turned around and walked off the stage and just said, well, there's a change. Okay. I hope everyone,
Work that way.
good luck, everybody. Right. So,
I'm laughing because in I've been doing this so long that you just so many ideas, so many past experiences come to mind
yes.
because that's what a lot of organizations do. They, oh, we're gonna do this. This is gonna be the latest and greatest, and here it is, and good luck. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really common to, if you're designing the change, if you're in charge of it, right? If you're
Yeah.
implementing this new program, for you, the biggest moment is the reveal.
Yes.
But for everybody else, that change it's after that.
Mhm.
It's how does this work? What does this mean for me? How am I, sometimes people go and, fall into a negative thought spiral where it's like how this is going to punish me, this is going to make my work harder. And if the conductor's not there to deal with that conversation or to step in and say nope, nope, keep going on that note, or whatever whatever conductors do, then it's just people are going to make up their own stories about the change, and it's really not effective. When we go back to effective leadership, it's not as effective as it could be. So I try, and when I think of stepping into these situations, I try and think about, okay, this rollout of this change is a really big deal, but it is the first step in a very long process of a big deal or a longer process.
Yeah.
So let's not think about just that first step. Let's plan for second stage of the change. Let's innovate around that. Let's strategize around that. The third step, fourth step, fifth step, until it's in that, the change has frozen, so to speak.
Absolutely. So, what are some of these organizations miss in that is there has to be a roadmap. Anything that you're
Yes.
going to introduce in your organizations, you have to really think through the process, and it's not just, okay, here's this and that's it. No, then, okay, what happens next? You gotta
Yep.
play a little bit of fortune teller where forecast some of the questions and some of the anxiety that's the change is going to cause, and how are you going to address, and how are you going to provide resources of who they can go to or where they can send questions in order to make the
Hmm.
process not not as much of an anxious time, but something that instead of being seen in the negative can be seen as a positive. And
Absolutely.
that's a really big deal. So in what you were saying, there was a couple of things. First, I at the beginning you mentioned that while yeah, they're making a lot of money, right? So there's one thing in a company having a lot of revenues. There's something different when you're talking about bottom line dollars. So typically, when you have a lot of revenues, you want to have a lot of systems, checks and balances, a good structural, uh, good management of expense systems so that you are able to be profitable. And organizations, when they grow too quickly, a lot of these nuances are not you don't foresee a lot of these nuances because you're growing so fast. And that's one nuances that doesn't get really foreseen and can get you in a lot of trouble because as soon as
Hmm.
you owe that money, you can burn through that money pretty quickly and then you're out of business. The other
Yeah.
piece of that you mentioned was people, and that's my love language right there. People. I'm all about people.
It is.
Yeah, I loving people. So when you're growing so fast, uh, you need to have a plan as well, a roadmap for your people.
Yes. I
Some of the
love that.
things, and I want to get your feedback on what I'm going on. What I'm going to say right now is what I've seen in my experience working with multiple organizations, being an executive in organizations, is that organizations they start and they have a plan. They want to be the best or the greatest or grow so much. That's their vision, but they really don't put thought through that process of okay, yeah, if I'm going to get from here to here, but what happens along the way? I mean, while
Hmm.
in one sense, growing revenues, you can get there, but then there's the other piece of uh, how are you going to lead the people, manage those processes? And what a lot of organizations miss is that there has to be a purpose to the business, right? And that's where
Hmm.
when you're starting the business or very early in your young years in the business, uh, the owners or the people running it really should look at having values. What is the value? What are you about? Because
Hmm.
any organization, doesn't matter the organization, whether you state what your culture is and your values or not, you're going to have one.
Yeah, that's very true.
Don't
That's
you want
very
to
true.
don't you want to have a say in that?
Yes, yes. Otherwise, the tail's wagging the dog, right? Your whatever your reaction is, what is controlling the business, not your proaction, for sure. Yeah. And I think that, sometimes what happens to, high level leaders is they maybe get a little bit intoxicated with the numbers and or the acquisition and kind of like the amount that they can acquire in a business. And even though they may have some values, those get kind of pushed back, which is why great leaders need a team of people around them that are reinforcing the culture that they initially, set up. And these values then really help with grounding people and making decisions. I work with my clients on this all the time. They're like, what should we do about blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, let's go back to your values.
Yep,
They're going to give you the answer when you don't know.
yep, yeah. And one of the things that I found is that on small and small to medium sized companies, the majority of them don't have values,
Mm,
which is
wow.
hard, which is
Yeah.
hard. Hard because your values if it has to be have to align with your mission and vision, um and if you don't have that, why are you in business, so
Yeah. No, that's
deal.
a really good point. Actually, that reminds me, I was working with another company, a small company this summer, and um, it's a leadership team of 5 people that were all doing their own thing, because they didn't have, and it was true, they didn't have values, or joint values for the company. So what the result wasn't that they weren't leading, leading the organization, but they were all leading it in different directions. So you
Mhm.
just didn't have a cohesiveness. And that what you just said really sparked true in that particular instance. They identified that they needed to come up with values, and they started working on that process. I think they did get some headway on it. The tricky part next for them will be to hold each other accountable to the values, if
There you
that
go.
makes sense.
Absolutely. And as the leaders of an organization, you're really tasked with that, because it's not
Mm.
not just the talk. You have to walk the talk.
Yes.
You
Yes.
set the tone in that, and when you do that, then you're going to have the right people with the right culture, the right values, and that in itself can carry you through the process of change.
Hmm.
Organizations, whether they're thriving or not, you kind of reshape yourself every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not doing that, you're not staying with the times. You're not going to stay relevant. You're probably not going to stay in business.
Right. Yeah, and you have to remind yourself, you have to stay pliable. And again, I think it helps when you have other people around you. Leadership is, to me, such a collaborative opportunity, So if you have other people around you to keep each other in check and to balance each other's strengths, it can be it can be a lot more fun. It can be a lot more fun, and it can also be a lot easier.
Yeah. So in looking at the characteristics of effective leadership during the times of change, there's a few that come to mind for me, and you tell me what your thoughts are. Um, usually it's in a combination, so they're not solo. So clear communication. Uh,
Hmm.
you have to be sending the right messages, but that their receiver is also understanding what the message is. That's why I say clear
Good point.
communication, not just communication. Strategic vision. We're undergoing change. So what is the vision? Lower the angst on people, show them the vision, and the strategic plan behind that. And then the last point and this is where I think you separate the leaders versus a manager. There's a big difference, a leader and a manager. Is having that empathetic guidance.
Mm, mm. That's interesting.
So what?
I'm just pausing because I wanted to note on that. And empathetic guidance. Can you say more on that?
Sure. I love this. You kind of try to put me up there. Hold on a second. It's supposed to be the other way around. Empathetic
No,
guidance.
I just think that empathy, there's a lot of it's dynamic. I think there's a lot of definitions, and I just want to hear from you, like how you look at it.
Sure. So when you look at change overall, nobody likes change. I get that. And me being a change agent, I'm a maverick. I'm gonna
Yep.
walk a different walk from everybody else. That's just me. So I love that. I don't feel anxious over change. Human beings by nature don't want change. They really don't. So that just the whole scenario of change creates that the level of anxiety, raises people's anxiety levels. Um, and some people are able to control their emotions better than others.
Hmm.
If When I talk about the empathetic guidance, is as a leader, having that emotional maturity to realize that the situation already has created a level of anxiety in people. We have to empathize with that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And how do
Yes.
we get the best out of people within that context of
Yeah.
having someone in a situation they're already anxious? You have to reshape or recreate what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
but do it in a way where you're really empathize with what they're going through. That's what I that's my view on the empathetic guidance piece.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think from a, highly skilled leaders and that do leverage empathy. And, in the EQ world, we kind of equate empathy with understanding or perspective taking.
Mhm.
So, and that's exactly what you just described, right? I have, as a leader, I'm controlling the change, so it's not as anxiety producing for me. Plus, maybe I'm naturally, like you just said, you're a change agent, so you enjoy initiating change, but you understand, and high level leaders will understand that that's not how everyone responds. And as a result of that understanding, they'll be able to better change their tone, their approach, the words they use, the cadence of how they talk about change. They'll be able to pause and validate the experience of people suffering from the change, but not necessarily slow it down, right? But still keep moving forward, but understand that it's tough. I think that's critical as well. I really, really do. And with your communication, you mentioned communication, it's clear communication. It's making sure people understand it. And that means you may have to communicate a whole bunch of different ways and
Yes,
even sound kind of like a broken record.
yes.
Can I give you a quick story about
Oh,
this one?
please, please.
This was like a good example of change because of the clear communication. So a company was going to install a new, this is a service, client facing company, and they had a new software program, that they had to install. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a fast paced business, to just do a whole new computer system is kind of, everyone has to learn something new under pressure and perform, right? So the leader was really astute and started talking about this. Didn't have all the details, but started talking about that this was coming down the pike, 6 months ahead of time. And at their weekly meetings, every meeting, she'd talk about the change, right? And any updates. And she did. By the end of it, I'll tell you, this group was bored. They're like, we know it's coming. Like, it's fine, right? And that's kind of what you want, is to people to be
Yep.
blasé about it. It almost feels like it already happened,
Yes.
and they're like, it's going to be tough when this happens. We're all going to be, we're all going to make mistakes and stuff. And just repeating that for 6 months made it so that the change was almost inconsequential.
Yes.
Anyway, I thought that was a success story that really highlights clear communication.
Absolutely. And also goes to the point of transparency.
Yes. Which makes people trust it, right? They trusted the leader that they weren't, that she wasn't holding anything from them.
Yep, I've been
They weren't
telling
going to
you
be
for
surprised.
all these days, all these months, this is going to happen. Now we're here.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're here and look, we've survived. It's not a big deal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things from the work that you do, so predictive index, I love it.
You are a champion.
Yep, yep. I know that's a big piece of what you do, and what the work that you do is amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
So if you guys need someone good, uh, contact Anna. Uh, I want to, in future episodes, I want to do a complete episode on predictive index and its viability. I've used it for many years, over 10 years in my career, and I swear by it. I know there's a lot of assessment tools, behavioral assessment tools out there, but I think predictive index, from having experience with multiple different ones, is the best one out there. And I think it's something that can be used during the process of change.
Mm, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So what behavioral assessments is do, and I'd be happy to do a whole nother episode and talk more about that. But what behavioral assessments do is it's kind of like another data point about the core motivating drivers that we all have. We all have four or five core motivating drivers that cause us to act even without thinking about it. And what PI and other or predictive index and other assessments measure is to what degree you're motivated by these core drivers. And that can help leaders understand someone's automatic reaction to certain things, right? On both a positive, positive in quotes, or, a negative response in certain circumstances. And change is one of those, change comes with it a lot of pressure, a lot of uncertainty. And we can measure in a way to some, again, it's one data point, but we can measure how someone might automatically respond to change, what their behavior, what behaviors might pop out as a coping mechanism to change.
Yes.
And that can be really helpful to have ahead of time. Again, not that you're going to assume that someone will, absolutely behave negatively or positively, but more like, oh, they may have a little anxiety around change, right? Especially if they're more on the, the perfectionist side of the, you know, I'm calling it a perfectionist drive, but it's called formality. But if they lean into perfectionism, change can cause little anxiety because why? There's more opportunity for failure and uncertainty. So that's really helpful. Or we can measure if someone is kind of more like you, where change can be, they can pivot more quickly around change, especially if they have control over it. So that's helpful to know that person might need control, or if they just need more time to get familiar for the change. And again, they don't have that time, then the anxiety or even stubbornness might pop up. So it's super helpful, again, to have that information ahead of time, not to prescribe again that anyone will for certain respond a certain way, but it can help you understand then going into communicating with a particular person or even groups of people, what tone and approach do I need to use? And a lot of times you're going to need to use multiple tones and approaches. But again, you can kind of pick and choose based on your audience.
Yes, and great. I mean, you said it so eloquently, better than I could. Uh, when you're going through change, you want to have enough data so that you can plan for it correctly. And
Why
when
wouldn't you want extra information?
absolutely, again, that raises the level of angst because now you know how to approach your teams, and maybe you put together the people that are good with change agent and give them a one specific project. And you put the people that are going to be really they're going to need more information, more data, more time. You put them on a slower project so that everyone is going at their pace, but change is happening, and
Hmm.
you are really lowering the level of stress and angst amongst the organization.
Absolutely. I think that makes so much sense.
Yep. So final thoughts here. I want to hear a few final thoughts from you, and then I'll go into a few things that I want to say after our conversation.
I love it. Please.
Clear communication and transparency from leaders are paramount as they foster trust, alignment among team members. Let's remember to openly share the rationale behind the changes. Having those clear lines of communication, addressing concerns as they arise. Don't let them pile up because it's going to raise that level of angst. And maintaining ongoing dialogue with your teams, letting them know this is where we are. We hit this target, we missed this target, but we're going to do this. Um, it allows leaders to create a supportive environment that empowers the team members to embrace and contribute to this transformative journey that your organization is going through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank
So I think it's really about, um, you know, effective leadership has everything to do with um, knowing where you want to go, having a clear, you mentioned clear vision before. So I always think about it as like knowing what your desired end result is, and then kind of working backwards to
Mhm.
having that plan for the change. I start every project I do individually or with a client with, where do I want to end up? And you spoke about values too. That can absolutely be a part of helping you, backfill the plan, um, and keep you on track. And then from there, the communication, um, in my opinion, you can't ever over communicate. I think sometimes people do worry about that, of saying, too much or sounding like a broken record. But it's been my experience that the more you share, the more trust you'll build, the more times people will hear it eventually, and understand it eventually. And change is really something that, similar to communication. It's just that it's well, it's not similar to communication, but change is inevitable, and communication is 100% how you're going to to make that change happen. Um, so I think sometimes, again, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but sometimes people think that communication is a one-time event.
No, it's not.
That change, the rollout, right?
Yep.
It's that rollout. It's the one-time event. But no, communication has to be ongoing, and it includes dialogue, which is two-way, right? Two-way or multi-way. Um, so, conductors, again, never step on stage, start the music, and then just walk off. You have to stay for the long run, and that means a lot of different actions and ways to facilitate that change, which does take a lot of effort, a lot of effort and skill, but it's so rewarding. I mean, you've probably managed so many different change projects. As far as I know, you're in the middle of a huge change project right now, and like turnaround type of thing, right? And there's so many rewards that you experience
Oh,
with
for
that.
me is that's what fills my bucket, as taking something that is not you're taking a mold
Hmm.
and get to create whatever you want from
Yes.
it. So that's where the magic is for me. At first, it's turbulent, I can tell you. um,
Yes.
but then you
Yes.
start looking, you start putting it together, and you're like, wow, now we're looking at a masterpiece. So the whole
Mm,
evolution of it for me is really gets me going, and I love being able to impact people, organizations, and as a leader, as a conductor, you get to do that.
hmm hmm I think for some leaders, probably like yourself, you think about people that really enjoy that molding and creating. Sometimes it is, you have to, and tell me if this is true for you. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that change doesn't happen quickly,
Yep.
and because of other people, and B, you have to step back and really celebrate the successes. You kind of have to look for them sometimes, with leaders like yourself that are so future focused, sometimes have to pause and look back. I don't know, do you ever experience kind of that?
All the time. One of the areas of growth for me was being able to take a moment and really and just sit back and enjoy, like, wow, we're
Yeah,
here, we got to hear. What an incredible journey. Uh,
absolutely.
so celebrating the small wins as they happen. Uh,
Yeah, you have to do that, because otherwise, you can get stuck in thinking things aren't moving fast enough, but those small wins add up.
Without a doubt. Well, this has been a great conversation. I figure it was going to be. Uh, Anna, tell us where people can find you if they want to contact you.
Thank you. Yes, so I own my own consulting firm called Anna Mason Consulting. Pretty easy. You can look me up on my website, annamasonconsulting.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I think my handle is Anna Mason or Anna C. Mason, or I have my business page, Anna Mason Consulting, on LinkedIn, also Facebook. So I look forward to connecting with anyone who wants to connect. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to spend a few minutes with you too, which I always enjoy.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. We'll have you on later so we can have doing episode on predictive index and behavioral assessments overall. I'm really intrigued by that, and I love using them in every way, shape, or form. Thank you, everyone.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.